Welcome to the first issue of Brick Something. Today we're taking a good look at Mattel's Masterverse edition of the mighty King Grayskull and learning a little more about this character's role in the Masters of the Universe. So this is the Masterverse action figure of King Grayskull, as seen in the Netflix show Masters of the Universe Revelation. He also plays a key role in the Revelation prequel comics, which not enough people know about. We'll be talking through all that while also looking at some photos, some of which are actually on my Instagram, where you can find me at InCarbonite. This won't exactly be a thorough figure review like on some other channels, but it's going to be more like me just kind of sharing what I love about this character and how I've kind of chosen to customize and display King Grayskull in my collection using custom sort of accessories, all just because I wanted to have the best version of the king that I could possibly make to properly do this character justice. Alright, so let's start with the head sculpt. Mattel packed in an extra head with this Masterverse Deluxe figure. It was the one you saw on the figure a second ago, and it's over here on the right side of the screen. This head shows King Grayskull with a more sort of stoic facial expression, while the one that he actually ships with in the box has a more kind of angry, it's like almost pained expression. I actually don't include that head here because frankly I really just don't like it. So focusing on the positive, I think it's great that Mattel gave us this second head. For me though, I still don't believe the look that Mattel gave us was the best possible option for me to represent King Grayskull on my shelf. So picky little me went and ordered a custom head actually from this amazing sculptor that you all need to know about. His name is Jose Luis Morel or Morelle. You have to check out his work on Instagram. He's Hordak MX over there. This guy's an incredibly talented sculptor, artist, toy maker from Mexico. I'm hoping to share an interview with him here on Brick Something very soon, but in the meantime, you'll also be seeing a lot of his Masterverse work in upcoming YouTube videos and on my Instagram. Okay, let's take a closer look at these heads. Again, the Mattel one on the right is actually pretty good. I think it's one of the best human heads in the Masterverse toy line. But what about Hordak MX's work on the left? Those eyebrows, the piercing red-yellow eyes. This face just looks so much more intense and regal. Those cheekbones too, super strong. The whole thing just has more life to it. Both do a great job with the king's hair. I actually prefer Mattel's version, and the profile of Mattel head is super good. Both heads use a flexible material for the hair, which is great for posing and sitting on this figure, which comes with this amazing soft goods cape with thick fur. The flex in the hair lets you use the head's full articulation, even with that big fur on. Here's a quick side-by-side peek at another Hordak MX head. I'm just showing it here on my made-up MOTU character that I call Core. We'll see him in a future video, but I'm just kind of trying to get you to see the quality of the Hordak MX custom heads. They're all made of hand-sculpted and hand-casted resin. Unlike Mattel's plastic heads, they're not really meant for the same sort of wear and tear if you were to like regularly play with them. Don't get me wrong though, these heads are super solid. I've actually dropped this one a few times and haven't had any issues, but you got to be more careful with these. You really should heat up the heads with water or a dryer or a low heat gun, but you'll see me here being a little lazy and kind of rough with them. Let's get this on the body. Hordak MX's custom heads pop right on and fit perfectly with the Masterverse body. There's no need for sticky tack or anything like that. And again, this cape that Mattel gave him is amazing. Like really, really quality soft goods. But see how this fur is kind of connected to the armor? Unless you put the head on correctly, you can really mess up how that fur looks. There's like a little slot for the back braid to pass through the cape. It's super smart. So if you put it through that, you can still adjust the fur. If not, you end up putting the braid on top of the fur, then it's going to kind of look like it's falling off his shoulders down his back. So yeah, well done, Mattel. Let's talk weapons. King Grayskull comes with the two halves of what becomes the power sword. I'm going to talk more about the lore behind these later, but the designs and sculpts of his swords are brilliant. They perfectly capture the look from the show in the comics. I also like to display my King Grayskull with a borrowed power sword from one of my He-Man variants. Before we get too far with the story of the swords, let's do some posing. Again, this cape is fantastic and includes the wires and this sort of tattered look. As you see here, it makes it quick and easy enough to create a dynamic look for the cape that'll live up to whatever mighty pose you're going for with the figure. Clearly the body's great. The skin tone is beautiful. I just got a tiny gripe with the whole little, like you notice this odd shine that's on the torso and the thighs. It's not on the arms. So I'm kind of assuming that Hordak MX saw this and kind of chose to give the hair and face a little bit of that similar shine. And take a look at how Mattel decoed the bracelets, belt, and loincloth. There's some good use of wash and color to bring out those sculpted details. These parts are exactly the same as the ones on a standard He-Man Masterverse fig, but He-Man's look basic compared to Grayskull's. Just another reason this one's a premium deluxe release. So who exactly is King Grayskull? I mean, this is a character that wasn't in the vintage toy line or the cartoon. More casual MOTU fans probably recognize the name Grayskull. This king and the famous castle that's the centerpiece playset of MOTU share that name. Die-hard fans may know that King Grayskull first popped up in the 2002 Mike Young Productions cartoon. It started airing on Cartoon Network 20 years ago. So we're actually celebrating MOTU's 40th anniversary this year, so that means that this character was from a cartoon that launched on its 20th anniversary, 2 full decades after the vintage toy line introduced us to this franchise. So yeah, the 2002 cartoon was phenomenal for its time. Loved it back then. But I was thrilled to see them change the character from that original look, which basically was a dead ringer for He-Man, but with longer hair and a fur-lined cape. In terms of embracing human reality and finally reflecting humanity's racial and ethnic diversity, I really applaud and deeply appreciate Kevin Smith, Powerhouse Studios, and the rest of the team behind Revelation for bringing us this powerful black variant of King Grayskull into the Masterverse. As a person of color myself who was 6 when He-Man arrived, let me just say that seeing a King Grayskull that wasn't a long-haired He-Man clone hit me in a truly profound way. It made King Grayskull both an earlier champion of Eternia that's similar to He-Man, but one that was a truly unique character who ended up facing his own adventures and enemies generations before Adam would. So I want to give you a taste of that awesome backstory. To do this, let me treat you to the gorgeous illustrations of Mindy Lee as featured in the must-read Revelation prequel comics. First, in addition to being a king and Eternian champion of good, the comic series shows us that King Devon Grayskull is a loving partner to Vina and a fantastic father to 2 sons, Dare Little Gray and Ro Little Gray. Those names should mean something to longtime MOTU fans, but I want to save some surprises, so I'm going to kind of do this in broad strokes. You see him here having a wonderful moment with his son, assuring a young Ro that he doesn't have to compare himself to his accomplished warrior brother, Dare. Grayskull tells Ro that he just needs to figure out what sort of hero he is. He goes on to talk to him about the use of a sword, which is great on many levels. Because I don't want to spoil anything in this video, but let me just say that the allusions here to what possibly becomes of Ro in the future, the relationship between Eternian champions and their weapons, and the history of the framed power sword are really going to be satisfying for MOTU fans. We also get to see King Grayskull fight Snake Man in this comic. Go ahead and pause right here to read another cool allusion to key lessons that Adam/He-Man comes to terms with later in Revelation. This comic also shows King Grayskull have a fun and very important interaction with a certain skeletal baddie. And here you'll see King Grayskull forging the purple-hued sort of dark side sword that comes with his figure. Notice who's with him as he does this. Seriously, go find this comic, MOTU fans. You really don't want to miss out on this. After he makes that second sword, he ends up offering both of these weapons to a certain orb. The MOTU Orb of Power. That's a huge deal in this universe. This orb takes both the light and the dark swords and merges them into a single, very special sword. It's actually the magical weapon Adam will hold aloft generations later. Presumably hundreds of years before Adam, we then see King Devon Grayskull belting out something along the lines of, "I have!" So if you didn't know already, I'm hoping you now see that this character is just so intriguing, and he's actually deeply embedded in the MOTU lore. When we see him later pop up in Revelation, as we see here, we're actually treated to some other really good glimpses into his personality and backstory. Dude even rides a dinosaur. Which brings us to why my King Grayskull toy sits atop this beautiful beast. As much as I wanted to match the Revelation show, I couldn't find a good green ceratopsian for him to ride. Nothing kind of scaled right. But back in May, I paired him up with this Mattel Stomp and Escape T-Rex from their Jurassic World line. It's a great sculpt and it was perfectly in scale. I ended up being able to just take Masterverse Battle Cat's saddle and throw it on this dinosaur, and then King Grayskull was sort of ready to ride in style. But then 2 months later, Mattel released something special. 2 words, Hammond Collection. I'll compare these 2 different dinos in more detail with another video, but this thing was a game changer. Check out the poses I can get with it. The joints on these legs are just next level. I couldn't do any of this with the original Stomp and Escape version. Check out this tail with its bendy sort of tip that always stays posed, and that mouth with these kind of soft skin flaps and posable tongue. There's just so much you can do with this thing. So let's get Grayskull on his steed. The dino actually still needs a name, so if you've got some ideas, please share them in the comments below. Now let's get some final looks at this figure. Looking great all around, right? As I hinted earlier, I was 6 years old when MOTU became a thing. And please trust me, as a little 6-year-old, the skin tone of these little action figures definitely mattered to me. All said and done, only 3 of the 72 vintage figures were people of color. And of those 3 people of color, only one of those was a hero that was black in appearance. The other 2 were villains who were Asian in appearance. This is contrasted by the 17 figures that were white in appearance. And no, having the other 50 non-human characters doesn't change what I'm breaking down. Besides, some of those had non-human heads, but had flesh-tone body parts that lacked melanin. So yeah, it mattered back then. And now that I'm 46 and have 2 beautiful brown-skinned kids, the presence of a bold black King Grayskull matters. So I'm hyped that Netflix and Mattel gave us this character. And as you can see here, my multiversal toy shelf is making him less lonely than I felt as a 6-year-old in the science fantasy world of MOTU. Not to mention the many other geeky franchises I love that didn't do much better in reflecting human diversity. Consider this group shot right here as your size comparison to other figs. Here we have a colorful mix of Mythic Legions, Marvel Legends, Mortal Kombat, and a fig with a different body style from the Masterverse line. So this officially brings our first issue of Brick Something to an end. No, this wasn't your typical review video, but if you're looking for other details about the King Grayskull Masterverse figure that I didn't cover, like the maybe points of articulation or packaging art, etc., please check out the fantastic review of this figure by Toy Bro, Toy Habits, The Man-Child, and by Pixel Dan. I'll link all those in the description. On that tip, I'm proud to have joined forces with the Legion of Lesser Toy Tubers. It's a recent formation of creators coming out of the gaggle of geeks who gather at the Gracious Geek Dad Life Patreon Discord. I really think you need to know who these folks are. So right after you click like on this video and then subscribe to Brick Something, I highly recommend you click this thumbnail on the left and check out what's happening over on Shiny Plastic People. Thank you so much again for watching this very first issue of Brick Something. Maraming salamat mga kasama. Muchas gracias compañeros. Peace and power.